The moment the news dropped, the wrestling world didn't just react, it exploded. Fans were confused. Backstage insiders were whispering. And social media turned into a battlefield. Because one question kept coming up again and again. Why would Road Dogg suddenly walk away from WWE? Not just any employee, not just another producer, but a WWE lifer. A man who bled the company for decades. A man who helped build some of the most iconic moments in wrestling history. And yet he was gone. No dramatic farewell. No emotional send-off. Just gone. But here's where things get uncomfortable. Because when you dig deeper, when you follow the breadcrumbs left behind by interviews, fan reactions, and the chaos online, you start to see a story that WWE probably didn't want fans piecing together. A story about frustration, creative clashes, fan backlash, and a locker room that may be far more divided than anyone wants to admit. So the real question isn't just why Road Dogg left. The real question is, did WWE fans push him out? Or did the company create the exact situation that made this inevitable? And before we break everything down, I want to ask you something real quick. If you were in Road Dogg's position, after giving decades of your life to WWE, would you stay and fight or walk away? Let me know in the comments. Because the truth behind the story is way bigger than one man quitting a job. It's about the direction of WWE itself. To understand what really happened, we need to rewind. Way back before the corporate titles, before the backstage meetings, before the online criticism. Back to when Road Dogg was one of the loudest voices in wrestling. Fans from the late 90s know exactly what I'm talking about. You heard the music hit, and suddenly the entire arena was screaming along. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Before he even finished the line, the crowd was already losing their minds. That wasn't just charisma. That was connection. Road Dogg understood something about wrestling that many modern creatives still struggle to grasp. The crowd isn't just watching the show. They're part of the show. And during the Attitude Era, that connection helped turn WWE into a cultural phenomenon. But after his in-ring career slowed down, Road Dogg didn't disappear. Instead, he moved behind the curtain. And that's where things get complicated. Because when fans criticize WWE storylines today, they often blame the writers. And for a long time, Road Dogg was one of the most visible creative figures backstage. He worked closely with talent, helped shape promos, contributed to the direction of major shows. And at first, many fans were excited about it. A former Attitude Era star helping craft the future? That sounded like exactly what WWE needed. But over time, the perception started to shift. Storylines began to feel repetitive. Some fans complained that shows lacked the unpredictability that once made WWE must-watch television. And gradually, the online conversation turned more critical. Then harsher. Then downright brutal. Suddenly, Road Dogg wasn't just a former legend helping backstage. In the eyes of some fans, he became part of the problem. Let me ask you something. Do you think WWE's creative problems come from the writers or from the people above them? Drop your answer in the comments. Because that question sits right at the center of everything that happened next. As social media grew louder, the pressure inside WWE creative reportedly grew too. Fans weren't just criticizing storylines. They were dissecting every single segment, every promo, every booking decision, every push, and every missed opportunity. And Road Dogg wasn't someone who stayed silent. Unlike many backstage figures who avoid the spotlight, he occasionally addressed fans online. Sometimes joking, sometimes defending the creative process. But the internet, especially wrestling Twitter, isn't known for calm debates. Conversations escalated quickly. Arguments turned personal. And slowly, Road Dogg found himself in the middle of a storm that no creative team member really wants. Because wrestling fans are passionate. But they're also relentless. If they believe something is wrong with the product, they'll say it loudly, repeatedly, and everywhere. And that leads us to a crucial turning point. A moment where fan frustration started boiling over. Not just toward Road Dogg, but toward WWE's entire system. Around this time, fans began noticing something interesting. Talented wrestlers would get huge reactions, only to disappear from television weeks later. Promising storylines would start, then suddenly vanish. New stars would begin gaining momentum, only to be cooled off. To fans watching at home, it felt chaotic. Almost like creative direction was constantly changing, which led to a bigger debate. Was WWE ignoring what the fans wanted? Or was the creative team being forced to follow orders from above? This debate mattered for one big reason. Because if the decisions weren't truly coming from the writers, then blaming people like Road Dogg might be missing the real issue. And that's when insiders began hinting at something many fans suspected. Creative ideas didn't always make it to television the way writers planned. Scripts could be rewritten. Segments changed last minute. Entire plans scrapped hours before the show. Imagine working in that environment, spending days planning a storyline, only for it to change moments before airtime. Now, imagine being blamed online for those decisions. That kind of pressure builds over time, and eventually something has to give. But here's where things get even more interesting, because Road Dogg didn't just quietly step away. Before his departure, there were already signs that his role inside WWE had shifted. Different responsibilities, changes in creative structure, and whispers that the company itself was evolving. New leadership, new priorities, new ideas about how WWE programming should look. Some people welcomed these changes. Others weren't so sure. When an organization as massive as WWE starts restructuring its creative system, there are always ripple effects. People gain influence. Others lose it. And sometimes, veterans who helped shape the past find themselves questioning where they fit into the future. So when the news of Road Dogg leaving finally surfaced, it didn't feel completely random. It felt like the final chapter of a story that had been building behind the scenes. But the reaction from fans? That was immediate and intense. Some fans celebrated. They believed a major change in creative leadership might finally improve the shows. Others were furious. They argued that Road Dogg was being unfairly blamed for problems he didn't control. And many fans landed somewhere in the middle. Confused, curious, trying to figure out what really happened. Because in wrestling, the truth behind the scenes is rarely simple. What we see on television is one story. What happens backstage is often another. And when someone with Road Dogg's history leaves, people start asking uncomfortable questions. Questions like, who actually controls WWE creative now? Are the writers being given more freedom or less? And most importantly, will anything actually change? Here's another quick question for you. If WWE completely reset its creative team tomorrow, do you think the shows would improve immediately? Or would the same problems continue? Tell me what you think in the comments, because that debate is exactly what WWE fans are having right now. And it goes deeper than just one person leaving the company. It's about trust. Fans want to believe that their voices matter. That when they cheer for a rising star, the company notices. That when they criticize a storyline, someone backstage listens. But when the same issues keep appearing year after year, frustration grows. And eventually, that frustration looks for a target. They make their voices impossible to ignore. So maybe the real story isn't just why Road Dogg left. Maybe the real story is what happens after he's gone. Will this moment spark meaningful change inside WWE? Or will fans still be asking the same questions months from now? Because if history has taught us anything about professional wrestling, it's that the loudest crowd reactions don't always happen inside the arena. Sometimes they happen online. Sometimes they happen in comment sections like this one. And sometimes they grow into movements that reshape the entire industry. Before we wrap up, I've got one last question for you. If you could change one thing about WWE right now, what would it be? Better storylines? More consistent pushes? More freedom for wrestlers on the microphone? Or something else entirely? Drop your answer in the comments, because I read them all, and the Ring Rumble community always has some of the most passionate wrestling fans out there. And who knows? Maybe the voices of fans like you are exactly what pushes the industry toward its next evolution. Because whether you loved Road Dogg's creative work or believed WWE needed a fresh direction, one thing is undeniable. His departure has ignited a conversation that isn't going away anytime soon. And as long as wrestling fans keep demanding better, the pressure on WWE to evolve will only keep growing, which means the next chapter of the story might be even bigger than the one we just witnessed.